So I was super excited. It was my final day in the halfway house, the 16th of August, 2009, and I had completed my federal prison term. And for so long, you never think it's actually going to end. And then guess what? For all of you traversing this system, unless you have a life sentence, or unless you're like Sam Bankman-Fried, who is making decisions that could keep him there for 50 years, but presuming it's a standard white-collar crime case, 3 years or less, give or take, you are coming home. And my prison sentence had eventually ended. And I was so excited that I used my final day in the halfway house home confinement. I went back there for the final day, actually walked to the bookstore not far from the Vinewood halfway house there in Hollywood. And I bought this book by Debbie Ford, Why Good People Do Bad Things. I read the book. I wrote a book report about the book. I shared it with people. They thought I was crazy. Like, why is a 33-year-old man sharing this book report with me? Good question. So I buy the book, and I was getting ready to meet my first like big client. Now, big, it's all relative. Big because he had been sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. Big for me because it was a client, and I'm embarrassed to tell you how little money I received. It was small, but when you're making 15 cents an hour in prison for a period of like 12 or 13 months, it felt like a lot of money. So when he hired me and the money went into my PayPal account at the time, I'm like, oh my goodness, someone has paid me. I began conversing with this person with about 3 weeks left in the halfway house. He's like, dude, I read your daily blog from prison. I read your book, Lessons from Prison already. I'm ready to hire you. Let's meet. I'm like, scale back for a moment. My probation officer, Isaiah Murrow, told me if I take money from anyone in a job that isn't approved, he's going to send me to Metropolitan Detention Center. So let's talk. Let me provide some value. Then when I'm done, we can meet. You can pay me. He's like, awesome. So the final day I buy him a book. And then we met that night, or the next night, my first full day of freedom. We met at Katsuya, a wonderful restaurant in Studio City. And I was like nervous. I was excited. I can't believe someone's paying me. This is crazy. I've been out of jail for about 9 minutes. I'm like really focused on myself and not really considering this guy is retaining me to help him. And he just got 10 years in federal prison. Now, I was somewhat prepared, I thought, for the meeting because I bought him this book, which I wanted to give to him. And well, I'm going to tell you that story in a moment. First, let me tell you why he was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. It's very serious. There was 15 people, his co-defendants or co-conspirators, in a very large pump and dump stock scheme. He was one of the promoters. So he had a friend who was running marketing these stocks all around the internet. He was retained as a promoter, and his job was social media boards, email blasts, fake newsletters, online press releases, all with the goal of promoting this stock, demanding such interest, getting people so excited about this company. He was a promoter using all means necessary. I will tell you, he told me when he went into this business with his friend, he thought he was legitimately promoting good stocks. Then, of course, you have the buying phase. Small investors around the globe get excited about this promotions. These new investors are lured in by the hype. They purchase the stock at an inflated price as everybody's moving it up, and it goes higher and higher and higher and higher. Then, of course, we have the pumping up. Then we have the dumping phase, where once the stock price reaches its height, all the market manipulators, what do they begin to do? They begin to sell, sell, sell. As Mortimer said in Trading Places, they make their profits, the price collapses, then you have tens of thousands of individual investors are left to hold the bag. And a lot of co-defendants, many cooperated. They got to him last, as they tend to do. Wasn't the organizer, but sometimes they get to the organizer first. They'll ask the organizer, anything you'd like to tell us? Yes, I have some buddies I swept into this. The FBI says, awesome, tell us what you know. They tell him, and they go arrest and indict everyone. And because of his role, and after he was on what's called pretrial supervision, he continued to work in a career promoting other stocks when the judge said, stop. You cannot work in this business anymore. His approach was, well, I otherwise had a stellar career. I did it bad in this one instance. Why can't I continue to live my life? He had a federal public defender at the time. He was bleeding resources. But part of the reason I think the judge went from 6 or 7 years to 10 years was because he deliberately disobeyed the judge's order to no longer work in that industry. So when I met with him, I was super excited. He had a great attitude despite going to jail for 10 years. Then when I met him at Katsuya, I handed him the book, and he's like, what is this? I'm like, well, this is a book I read, Why Good People Do Bad Things. It's helped me understand why I crossed the line, the pressures I faced, the rationalizations I gave into, why I broke the law and went to federal prison. I want you to read while you're in prison. I want you to be productive. I want you to take action. I want you to build a new record and not let this 10 years define the rest of your life. He's like, dude, I don't He's like, what? What? You're making me uncomfortable. I don't want to read this effing book. I didn't hire you for it. What? Who the hell is Debbie Ford? Why are you giving me this book? I don't want to read it. I didn't pay you to bring me books. I've hired you. What is commissary like in prison? Like, what do I bring? What do I surrender with? I just got sentenced to 10 years. I'm going to Taft Camp, where you just came home from. Part of why I hired you. Like, can you prepare me for prison? I don't care about your ethics and philosophy stuff. I skipped over those blogs, and I'm like, it's uncomfortable. They come over. I'm not. I don't know if I want the shishito peppers. Can you hold on? You got the famous crispy rice, spicy tuna. I've been in jail. I've been looking forward to it for 13 months. I don't know. I haven't had a drink in 13 months. I'd love from sake, but my first client out of prison is like yelling at me. He's angry at me. This isn't going great, and it was a very uncomfortable setting. But let me tell you where I failed. I kept going. Following the meeting, hey, dude, read this book, read this article, read stuff by my business partner, Michael Santos, who's been inside for 22 years. Look at how he's overcome and endured and built a network and reputation. Then he'd say, I don't care, and I don't feel that bad. I think the government's the worst of them all. I think they're the biggest criminal. They waste and blow more money than I ever could have done in my scheme. And by the way, there weren't even any victims. Who are the victims? Is that the victim over there? Is that the victim over there? Is that gardener over in the corner cleaning out those trees the victim? How about that waitress over there? She looks really devastated as a result of what I did. Don't give me your nonsense about victims. I didn't hire you for you to tell me right and wrong. I hired you to tell me about federal prison. That's what I remember thinking to myself, damn, I wish I was actually back in prison. This is really uncomfortable. I'm 48 now. I'm 34. I've been out of jail for 9 minutes. Someone has actually paid me. It's different when it's like, I'm giving free advice. Read my blog, read my book. It's free. There's no obligation. There's nothing there. But when someone pays you, I don't care if it was a couple $1,000s, you have an obligation to produce. And where I failed miserably was not delivering on the expectations of my client. I went into my moral shtick, my moral horse about accepting responsibility. And all he wanted to know was, dude, what shower stall do I masturbate in? I'm going to be away from women for like 7 years. What shower is that at Taft Camp? Can you tell me that shower? How do I get the right shower shoes or the right shoes to exercise? Because I read in one of your blogs that it takes 30 days to order shoes at Taft because it's privately run. Can you hook me up with a pair of shoes? You just left there 3 months ago, and I feel I'm cowering. I'm weak. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. I've been out of jail for 9 minutes. I'm thinking to myself, maybe I should go do that corporate speaking thing. Does that work? Here's some of the lessons I learned through this experience. I should have read The Room. My client didn't hire me to teach him about Ayn Rand and values and Aristotle and Plato and Michael Santos overcoming 22 years in federal prison. He didn't give a rat's ass, as he told me. He hired me for some basic federal prison planning, how to get out of jail, what to surrender with, how to get a good job, how to get a good bunk, what's a cop out, what bathroom do I masturbate in. That's what he wanted to know. And what I've come to learn through the 12 or 13 or 14 years that I've been in this space, the lion's share of defendants who plead guilty are incredibly remorseful. They have such shame and pain over what they've done. Sure, it comes at different stages. I didn't feel it till I stood for count in federal prison, till I called home after that first week and said, wow, I get it. I'm going to be here for a while. When my niece was born in prison, her friends are getting married, building businesses, and I'm feeling left behind, isolated. That's when I began to think I need to reflect on the decisions I made that led me here. Why did I seize a criminal opportunity? That was transformative for me. But guess what? It isn't for everyone, including my first post-sentencing client who got 10 years in federal prison. The most people come around, most clients with whom I would give this book, read it. Another wonderful book, my favorite book, called How to Live, A Life of Montaigne, 21 Questions on How to Live and Die. The majority of my clients receive it, love it, and read it. Some do not want it. And that's the takeaway from this. The lion's share of people who go through the system acknowledge remorse and responsibility and want to become better. In some instances, one of my first client had no remorse and no shame. And that's what brought up this moral dilemma that it took me many years to come over. Indeed, my wife and I, Sandra, will be married 10 years this September. I filmed a video I haven't posted yet called How I Met My Wife After Federal Prison. But I recall on one of our first dates, she said something akin to, is it hard for you? And I said, hard for what? She's like, well, to work with people who have done really bad things. And that's the moral dilemma around it. Indeed, I work with people who have broken the law and hurt people and devastated lives. I had done that as well. And knowing that they become my friends with whom I spend time with, hire our team and give us money, it took me a while to reconcile it. And I am now numb, I will acknowledge, to people who will reach out to us and say, I have no remorse. I think following this live video, I may do a TikTok short about a physician who got caught in a money laundering scheme, took prescription kickbacks from marketers for writing prescription drugs, gets the cash, deposits the money in a bank, this whole money laundering scheme, and just no remorse, no shame, according to his son who called me. That's few and far between, but it doesn't change that if he retained our company, we would help him because that is what our company does. The idea for this video stemmed as I wrap up this YouTube live. On Monday, I sat for an interview with CNBC, and it's for a documentary miniseries on white collar crime that's going to come out next month. And she asked me, have there been any pump and dump stock schemes with whom you've worked? And I thought about my first client who I met at Katsuya in Studio City the day after I was released from federal prison, who got 10 years. And it was a learning lesson. I'll never forget it, which is why I wanted to share this with you. So those of you who are on the white collar advice side, and often many of you don't have sympathy for white collar criminals because unlike cancer, we chose to do this. I want you to know the lion's share of us accept responsibility. The lion's share of us want to do better. It may take a while for them to get there. And it's a real anomaly. 1 in 1,000 for someone to say, I don't care about what I did. I don't care if I've created victims. I don't think I did. I think the government's the biggest crook of all, the way they waste our taxpayers. I don't want any of your philosophy and ethical nonsense. Where do I masturbate in prison? That's the value I provided to that defendant, my first client, just after I was released from prison. Some of you may ask if I still connect with them. The answer is no. I didn't do a great job. I didn't really provide the value that he wanted or needed. He surrendered to federal prison. I heard he was at Taft for a while, and then he transferred to several prisons across the country and ended up in Big Springs, Texas. And he served 7.5 years, I believe, on his 10-year sentence. Thanks for watching this live video about my first client's pump and dump stock scheme that led to a federal prison sentence of 10 years and some of the lessons I learned. Not everyone wants the moral story, the ethical stories. Sometimes I just got to talk about prison.